Good morning and welcome to today's webcast, Facilitating an Effective Member Census. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Welcome and thanks for joining us. Moss Adams webcasts are designed to help elevate your business performance. Transform your future for the better with advisory solutions tailored to your vision and supported by our collective technical resources. Our presentation will start in a few moments. Before we begin, here are a few things to keep in mind. You can customize how you both view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can also adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons, each relating to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF copy of today's slides from the slide deck and handouts widget. You can ask our presenter questions during the webcast by typing a question in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions during the presentation or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty during today's presentation, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. As a reminder, the presentation you're about to see is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
I'm pleased to introduce today's presenters. From Moss Adams, we have Emily Hayes and Alyssa Galvan, who are both managers with our consulting team. We are also so excited to have Snoqualmie Tribal Councilwoman Chrissie Sparling joining us today. With that, I'll turn it over to Emily to get us started.
Good morning. I am so glad to be here and to see folks joining. It feels like such a privilege to get to be with you all here today. Quick overview of what we're hoping to cover. We've already got those introductions. We're going to give you a little bit of a background about this project, how we got so lucky to work with Chrissie and the tribe on this census project. We're going to cover kind of the how and the what, but really we are very lucky to have Chrissie here to talk about some of the whys and the hopes for the project and what it means for them going forward. We're going to cover some of the lessons learned, the retrospectives, what we thought, oh, next time it would be great if. And then we have an open Q&A. We'll lead off with some questions that we've already prepared, but then would love any input or ideas from the audience if you have questions about what we've presented. And so this hopefully is a conversation style and feeling type webinar. This is not for CPE, so there's no quizzes, I promise. We have 2 short polling questions just out of pure curiosity about kind of what folks might be thinking. So how did we get here? Early last year, we heard from the tribe that they were interested in doing a member census, and they engaged us to partner with them through almost a year-long process, going through the census design, creating a methodology, putting together all the components of what might go into, the communication strategy and the Q&A or the FAQs. Then we helped administer the census. We worked with Chrissie to get the word. We used our platform Qualtrics to have the census questionnaire go live. And we kept that open for almost 2 months. And then we went into the reporting period, and Alyssa's going to go into more detail on that. But it was really such an experience to get to work with Chrissie and the rest of the tribe. And I just want to highlight, there was so much great engagement. And so that's one of the reasons that led to this webcast, is that we wanted to really get Chrissie's energy here and share it with all of you. So with that, we have a very brief, short first polling question that I'm going to hand off to Kiva to administer.
Thank you, Emily. The first polling question is, has your tribe conducted a member census in the past decade? A, yes. B, no. C, I don't know. D, not applicable. I'll give everybody a few moments to respond. Just a reminder, to participate, please click the button next to the answer you choose and hit submit.
This is where I wish we had background music to play with the poll.
I could sing for you. Da, 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 da.
Looks like we have about 70% response so far. I'll keep it open for another moment here. Okay, submit your answers. Last chance. Okay, and here are those results.
I love it. This means we have a nice array of folks who both have some experience and maybe those who don't, and those who maybe are just curious, which is great and why we're kind of gathered here today. So it doesn't surprise me that there's kind of a mix of the knows and I don't knows, because I think one of the reasons, Chrissie, that the tribe reached out to us was some of the historical challenges that have occurred with the federal census and other survey elements that we don't have to dive into right now. But I would like to proceed then onto the next question that I had for you, which was, what have you heard about from other tribes about census efforts? I would just some of the conversations that you've had with other tribes.
Yeah, great question, Emily. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for having me on today. I'm really excited to be here and participate with you. Yeah, honestly, I have heard a lot of, we want to do one too, but we don't even know where to start. We've heard curiosity, hesitation, a lot of fear, because getting it right is a huge deal. And I actually sat on a panel with other tribes working on their own census projects. And the consensus in the room was loud and clear. This isn't just needed, it's really needed. Yes, and there's a deep-rooted distrust in Indigenous communities with good reason. But we all agreed, if you don't collect your own data, someone else will. And it probably won't tell the story you want it to. So now is the time to take control of the narrative, even if it means a trial by fire, which was what we kind of did. So yeah, that's what I've heard.
No, thank you so much. And so to make you keep going, though, I'm going to move in to asking about the excuse me. Why did you choose us? Why did you partner with an outside party?
Well, because working with smart people is the best way to go about a project. No, in seriousness, we've worked with Moss Adams in the past. So this wasn't actually a shot in the dark for us. This is a trusted relationship that we've had for years. And for a project as sensitive and significant as a tribal census, we needed more than just technical skill. We needed integrity. We needed confidentiality, and we needed people who understood the gravity of what we were trying to accomplish. And we needed to partner with teams that would cater to our cultural needs.
Thank you. And now I'm going to hand it over to Alyssa to ask some more questions, because this is Chrissie in the spotlight.
Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. So before we dive into a little bit more around the details that Emily kind of spoke to in the intro, just in terms of the approach that we took with this project, Chrissie, I think it would be great to hear from you what the tribe's main goals were for conducting the census, because I really think that that really helped drive the methodology that we took to the census. So if you could speak to that, that would be great.
Yeah. In short, we need to know our people and we need to service our people. And our community, I'm so sorry, my printer decided to just turn on randomly. Should stop in just a second. But our tribe had basically tripled in the course of 2 years. We moved to descendancy. And so that amount of growth required data research. And because now, you know, you're no longer catering to that small group. Now you have a bigger picture that you're catering to. So we really wanted to make sure that we were going to understand all of the needs that our people had, especially like, where do they live? What do they need in their community? What is their community, you know, that they live in lacking? How can we help? Especially like in the cultural aspect, how can we help on that cultural piece? Getting our programs to them, getting to where they can engage with us even from a distance. And a lot of people aren't really computer savvy, or they don't really have a lot of technical skills. So this was a huge challenge for us to try and get them to engage with us through the internet or through the computer, because it's really the only way we can get to some of these remote people. Especially, we have a lot of people that live in Alaska that we learned about recently. So yeah.
No, that's a really great context. Thank you for that. So diving a bit more into the details, like Emily said, really step one was listening to Chrissie and team, understanding those goals, and really developing a census methodology, or what we like to really call the playbook. How are we going to go about this census project? What are those different phases that we need to include? And what are those action items within each phase that need to be completed? So that really started with the survey design. And this was really focused on just defining out those questions that we wanted to include in the census. And huge shout out to the Snoqualmie team in this piece. They really came together, all different departments, to give feedback here. A couple things that we just took into consideration: ethical considerations, rights of the participants, and really how can we encourage the participants to not only take the survey, but complete it. So some thoughts around there that we had were, you know, how many questions do we want to make the survey? How many questions do we want to make required versus optional? And are there any, you know, incentives that can be included within this process to really encourage participation? So again, the Snoqualmie team was so critical to this piece in reviewing those questions, really thinking around those data points that they want to capture, and even thinking around, okay, maybe this department needs this data point, this one needs this. Is there a way that we could phrase a question where maybe it would have been 2 questions? Could we rephrase the question to make it into one where we're still capturing that data that both departments will utilize? So just really great collaboration in that phase. And then we went into the survey distribution phase. So as Emily mentioned, we decided to use the Qualtrics platform to distribute and host the survey electronically. So within this phase, though, too, is really going back to what Emily mentioned, that communication plan was put into effect. So here, again, we really utilized what has been successful for the tribe in the past. We utilized, you know, the email addresses that they have on record to send direct links to those individuals to take the census, put a lot of information on the website in terms of just giving visibility. What is the purpose of the census? What are we trying to accomplish? How is it going to work? And then another really great aspect that we did was postcards that had QR codes on them, because again, the tribe has just had a lot of success with kind of getting messaging out that way too. So really listening to what has been successful for them in the past and applying it to the census. And so as the census was live, Moss Adams was providing technical support more on the back end to the Qualtrics platform, just answering any questions anybody might have had, or maybe they didn't see an email come through. We've all had that where it's like, I'm waiting for that email, but maybe didn't see it. So just providing any kind of assistance there. And then through the whole life cycle of the census, we also had live monitoring of the responses. And again, just another huge shout out to Chrissie and team for really being boots on the ground in this phase and just picking up the phone, encouraging participation. Just another really great aspect to this too is, Chrissie, I know you and the team really thought around how can we capture the tribe's elders' participation as well? How can we get them engaged? Because it is an electronic survey, how can we make that a really streamlined process for them and maybe utilize events that they'll be in attendance to and really kind of help guide them through that process as well. So just again, huge shout out to Chrissie for just really driving and team for driving that participation. Like Emily said, we kept the census open for just about 2 months. Once we closed it, we then went into a data cleansing and quality check just to make sure, we had consistent data across the responses to really dive deep into the analysis. So our analysis really consisted of 2 different pieces. That quantitative, which was really driven by, more of those multiple choice questions that we included in the census, really getting those numbers around the data. But another great piece to it was more of the qualitative analysis. So within that survey design, we did include free response questions just to capture, any additional feedback that members might have wanted to give to either any of their responses or maybe something that just wasn't captured in the census question. So got a lot of great feedback in terms of free responses, and we were able to take all of that data and look for themes across the responses and really kind of just put together a really detailed qualitative analysis, as well as provide some insight into the numbers. So a few project highlights. We got 50% participation, just over 400 individuals, which was just so exciting to see. Again, just speaks to all the work Chrissie and team put into just encouraging that participation. And kind of to that first polling question, another great benefit that came out of here is, again, the methodology, almost that playbook that can be referenced in the future. The next time Snoqualmie wants to do a census, their team has a resource now that they can look through, templates, and just information that can really help kind of guide them through this process. And we'll talk a little bit about lessons learned too that we also included in this a little bit later. But I would love to know, Chrissie, just kind of based off of all of that, what's your hope for how the census data will impact tribal governance and planning?
Yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit about the slide you were just on about how we collected that data and stuff, and the numbers, the 50%. So 50%, I just wanted to let everybody know, this is the highest successful survey we've ever done. Like I said, Indigenous communities are kind of, we're a little reluctant to give out data and information like this. So this was a huge accomplishment that I couldn't have done without the Moss Adams team. So big shout out to you guys. But yeah, what are we hoping to do with this, with all of this? Realistically, I am hoping that this is going to be like our North Star. I really believe in data collection. Because decisions that need to be made, they should be fact-based. And you should be looking at data points in order to help you, because that's truly what your community wants, or that's what they need, and that's how they're going to grow. And so you want to have programs that they are going to be able to utilize. And like I said, with us we're not a reservation tribe necessarily. We have a reservation, but it's our casino is on it. Our people do not live on our reservation. So we're a little more scattered to the wind. So we really have to find programs and develop programs that are going to cross multi-state lines, cross time zones. And we wouldn't be able to do that without data research. So I'm really hoping that we will be able to make some very good decisions around housing, around healthcare, around education, economic development. Like I said, everything should be based around data now. We're not shooting in the dark or relying on assumptions. With the census results, I think we can actually back up our plans with numbers and say, this is what our people actually need. And this is where we're actually going to go. And then I think our programs will get a lot more utilization. And I think that we'll be able to really cater to the future generations of our people, because it's most likely that they're going to stay wherever they're at. And so we need to be catering to that larger scale community.
Yeah, no, I think that is amazing. And I love that data-driven mindset that you have, just in terms of using that data to help with those conversations. So thank you for that. So Kiva, I'll hand it off to you to do our second polling question. Again, just a quick little question just to get some insights into.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah.
The question is, do you think your tribe would benefit from conducting a member census? A, yes. B, no. C, I don't know. D, not applicable. Again, I'll give you a few moments to respond, and to participate, please click the button next to the answer you choose and hit submit. And for those of you who might like a copy of today's slide deck, you can download them from the folder that says slide deck and handouts. We'll also be sending the slides via email following the webcast. Okay, we have about 50% participation. Leave this open for another couple moments here. Okay. And here are those results.
Oh, well, this one is great to see that it seems like the majority definitely think that they could benefit from conducting a member census. Chrissie, do you have any benefits? I know you've spoken a bit to it, but is there anything else you wanted to highlight just in terms of benefits, maybe some examples?
Yeah, I mean, I can think like right now in the short term, the census data is going to help us better with our grant applications, because we're now going to have targeted funding. So instead of just applying for any and every grant that we think could benefit the tribe in the short right now, we have data points now that say, no, this is what we absolutely need to be going for. This is what's going to drive our people forward. So that's in the short term. You know, and also in the short term, there might be a little bit of "I told you so" in the council chambers. That's all I'm saying, in the nicest possible way. But yeah, no, and in the long term, I think that we're going to see like stronger community services. We're going to see better presentations, and we're going to have a clearer picture of who we are now as a tribe. And then we're also, you know, this is the bonus that I see as well, because of how we set it up. And we are planning on doing this every 10 years now. So we've now set up to track trending so that we can now start to see how things are trending. And so we're not making things guesswork anymore. We're really starting to power drive and move with our people, which is so important.
Yeah. No, those are great examples. Thank you for that. So now I'm going to hand it over to Emily to talk through a bit of kind of the lessons learned once we went through the census.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is always great to have a successful project, and on every successful project, there's still things that you can learn and take away from them. It's that continuous improvement mindset. So as part of our project, we did a retrospective kind of through a few different lenses. One was kind of the overall process in the project, kind of checking in, going back and referencing the plan that we put together initially, and then what actually happened, right? What was used and changed and adapted as the census was open, right? We had a few tweaks along the way because we just hadn't thought of, right, that kind of thing where, oh yes, it would have been useful to have the age grouping breakouts in the survey itself instead of just expecting those to be on the kind of calculation after the census closed, because Chrissie had a personal goal to really get a high percentage of elder participation. And she achieved her goal, and it was amazing. But in order to be able to kind of track that progress, we did some kind of live finagling and additions to the survey so that we could give her that reporting on a regular basis about who all was participating by age group. So starting with some of the, oh, I wish we would have done that type questions, topics. We realized kind of at the end, because we were trying to balance the fact that there were over 80 questions, you know, that's a sizable amount of time we're asking from folks to participate. And while many of those were, you know, select one or select all, there wasn't a huge lift in terms of folks having to actually, you know, enter in free form text. It's still a lot of questions to click through. And so we made very few questions truly mandatory to participate, because we wanted to give kind of agency to members to answer what they wanted to and leave anything out that they didn't feel comfortable answering. However, you know, what that resulted in is what our kind of pool of data was relatively shallow. It was sufficient for looking at the overall, like across the whole tribe, right? We had good numbers for, you know, looking across all of the participants. But once we started trying to slice and dice by different demographics, like household income categories or education level or location, right? Like some of the elements that would have been more interesting to see, you know, it's interesting to see who owns their home by age group. That's a much more interesting thing to look at than just who owns their home, yes or no, across the tribe. However, because we didn't make all of those questions mandatory, the data just didn't hold up to having the level of slicing and filtering that Chrissie and I both dreamed of. We had grand aspirations of beautiful multiple filters, and that didn't come this time, but in the future, then, you know, we think it would be valuable to really go through that exercise once more and really talk about what's the most important, what's the most interesting, and what's the most decision kind of driven data that we can gather out of this, and make sure that those questions are mandatory. The other thing that kind of came out, there were a number of answer choices that we, you know, had an other box on. And so that actually was really just an improvement so that we could take, you know, what people put into the other box and then add those as choices. But we did those kind of manually and retroactively. And so it was it would have been, you know, nice to have that as an answer choice in the beginning, but now we have that updated kind of answer choice that we've included in the questionnaire kind of version that we have shared back as part of the census packet. Now let's talk about what really well though. So we did 2 versions of in-person support. In addition to Chrissie's just ongoing, I think, personal crusade to get everyone to take it. The first one, I got to join the elders retreat, which was in the middle of the census period. And we set up areas where folks could come over and we could scribe for them and input their data. And that worked really well. And it was super meaningful for me just personally. I felt very lucky to be able to be there and hear some incredible stories along the way. But it seemed like that was a really good avenue for folks. That was the day that we reached Chrissie's goal of elder participation. And it was really great to have that space where folks could have some privacy to complete it, but also it was enough to, I think there was some peer pressure of going up and saying, oh yes, they're completing, you should too. If I can do it, you can do it too. So that I thought was a really big part of the success. And then also we gave a lot of different, well, everything was electronic. We didn't use a paper version of the census because of a few different reasons. And I think that we were validated in that choice. But we did give a few different ways to access that questionnaire. So as Alyssa mentioned, we did a direct email out using the tribe's directory. We also had a registration page where folks could enter in their email, their name and their email, and receive a unique link. Now, why do those first two options really matter? Well, because that they could use that link to start the census, but they didn't have to complete it before closing. They could close it and come back later and finish it without losing all the information that they had already started entering. And again, given that it was 80 questions, pretty meaningful thing to allow folks to come and go. However, we still gave them a third option. We had a one and done link where they could use the link without, on a public computer. It didn't have to be anything special or connected to an email. They could go in, complete it, submit it, and we could know it was done that way. So all of that to say, I think the multiple communication paths and multiple ways to do it, the in-person support. There was a phone campaign day that Chrissie and I spent together, both reminding people to take it and also allowing them to take it over the phone as we scribed for them, or I should say Chrissie scribed for them. She did the heavy lift that day. And then finally, I want to just reiterate, we had such strong engagement and support from council, from Chrissie, from the staff, from the whole life cycle of the project, from the design phase to the end. It would not have been nearly, like, we couldn't have done this without that engagement. This would have just been like a sad wah-wah sound of a project if we didn't have the kind of engagement, enthusiasm, and dedication from tribal employees and council. So that is my, those were some of my retrospectives, our retrospectives as a team. But Chrissie, I would love to hear if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, those were great retrospects. Yes, so, oh boy, lesson one, start early, like way earlier than you even think to start. Whatever your timeline, you've got to double it, then add snacks. So the second one, I would say communication is everything. It really is. And by everything, I mean memes, I mean text blasts, I mean elders calling their cousins, surprise cameos at department meetings, and a very patient outreach team who can say the same message 100 times over and over, but make it sound great. Third, I would think that tech is your best friend and your worst enemy. So just know that going in. Choose systems that can take a beating, because they will, and make sure your IT team is in it for the long haul so that no ghosting is allowed. And finally, I think the most important lesson, don't just collect data. Listen. Every form filled out represents a real person with a real story, a family, and a history. Be present, be respectful, especially when engaging with elders. Take the time to hear what they actually have to say, because honestly, some of the most valuable insights are not going to come from a checkbox. They are going to come from a conversation that you had with somebody, and it's going to be meaningful. I'll say that the most rewarding experience for me was engaging the elders. And even though the census if you really just sat down and took the census, it was probably about a 25 to 30 minute survey if you just sat there and clicked all the buttons. But I would say on average, for an elder, it probably took several hours to get through a census with them. And it was the most rewarding time of my life. I got to learn so much history and so much about just what they went through. Because for them, it's not, you're not asking, do you own your own home? It's, no, my husband and I built this home. My husband built it with his bare hands. And, you're hearing about all of their struggles. You're hearing about their successes. And every question, they have a story to tell. And we just have to be able to listen to it because it's our story. In the end, all of their stories make up ours. So I think that if there's any takeaway that you can get from a census, that is what you should take away. Listen to your people and gravitate to their stories because it's yours.
Thank you so much, Chrissie. That was so much better than my retrospectives. So a little off script. I know we talked about some of these questions, but I am curious, is there anything that surprised you with the results, or was it more validating? Kind of where did the results end up for you in terms of, oh yes, that makes sense, or I never would have thought?
Yeah, no, there was a couple that really surprised me, that I like demographically, where our people live. That's been a huge reckoning. I've now started to like, hey, I hear you live in Texas. Guess what? I know of another person that lives in Texas. And so now, it's been kind of like trying to say, hey, here's a support team for you who's tribal members who actually live in your area if you guys would like to connect. And that's been huge, even though it's been a very small piece. Like that's something that was easily done, but it was huge for those people because they didn't know that they had tribal members that lived 2 miles from their house. And so that was, that I don't know, that was like refreshing. And it's like, wow, you live someplace that you didn't think you had family, and now you have family. I don't know. I think that for me was huge.
That seems really worth noting, right? Because I think that's one of the reasons that, originally you talked about as we were designing this was we know we don't know the spread. And so, yeah, that's great. Yeah. So now I'm going to move us into our final section. We're going to rapid fire. No, not rapid fire. We're just going to ask some questions to Chrissie without too much more direction. And then if there are any questions from the audience, if any of you are curious about anything, happy to answer those. There's a Q&A box in the webcast. You're welcome to drop folks questions in there. So my first question for you is, and you touched on this a little bit, so it might be a bit duplicative, but how are you hoping that the results can be used to improve services for tribal members? And I guess, we did that qualitative analysis and the quantitative analysis about not only what members rated in terms of what they wanted more of, but then the themes within their narrative responses. So I'm not sure if you have anything about that, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think that we're going to finally be able to tailor our results, tailor our programs instead of just throwing things at the wall. You want to know if we need more elders programs? Well, our elders have answered, yes, we do. And we've got it, how many kids might benefit from a new scholarship or from a summer camp? We now have those data points. We actually can see that now. So I just think that the data makes our services actually meet our members where they're at instead of where we think they are.
Great. Alyssa?
Yeah, so again, I know we've touched on this a little bit in kind of the lessons learned, Chrissie, but I would love to know in your opinion, thinking about more of the retrospective in terms of challenges, what were some of the biggest challenges from your perspective faced during the census process?
Let's just say if you think of herding cats is tough. Try tracking down thousands of tribal members during a pandemic rebound year across multiple states with limited staff and a ticking clock. Other challenges, data security, platform setups, cross-departmental wrangling, and the classic, wait, you changed your phone number again? Why? So those are like the immediate, just in your face challenges. And, I think that with anything though, persistence pays off. You just stay in it. What's important to you will make it across the finish line.
Definitely. No, I think that's really great points, because you'd think something as simple as like, well, we have all of these emails on record, we should be good to go, right? But people definitely change their email addresses, they change their phone numbers. So yeah, very good point there. Emily, did you have another question?
Well, I do, but it's very similar to one of the questions I see in the Q&A space. So I'm going to kind of merge the two of them. One question says, what systems and practices will you place to make sure leadership is consistently using data to guide decisions, track progress, and adjust strategies when needed? And Chrissie, this is obviously for you, but I think it speaks a little bit to kind of the questions earlier on about improving services for tribal members. So I wanted to keep those kind of closer together.
Yeah, I think that that's a valid point. Like, how are you going to keep that consistency across leadership that's changing? So I think that the biggest thing that you need to do is you need to create policies that is always going to be membership minded. So that way you always do have to refer to the data. You don't make it I don't want to say a choice. You make it a check the data. You build it into the policies and into the practice. And that's what I'm hoping to do, because I know that my tribe has done other surveys, and I'm sure other tribes have too, and the results don't go anywhere because they're not necessarily sure of how to implement. So that's where I'm a huge data techie person. So I'm very much into policy and making sure that the changes that I make today within the tribe are lasting. So that's how I would do it, is I would change policies to make sure that you're utilizing every step that you can. And it makes the most sense, especially with your changing membership and your changing leadership and your changing employees. That's the only way to keep it consistent.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Another question from the Q&A, which fits into another question that I had, which was, my question was, how did the tribe encourage participation? And then from the Q&A, though, the question is, with large populations, what would you recommend for engagement and participation? Large populations being 5,000 plus. And so I can talk a little bit about, we had an incentive. We had a $50 incentive that members could opt into receiving if they completed the census. And I think most people did opt in to receive it. I don't know how, but Chrissie, you probably have a better sense of like how much that mattered or not in terms of participation.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest here. I'm going to say it depends on your age group there. Yes, most people did opt in to take the $50 incentive. However, there was one population that did not opt in to take that money, and that was your elder population. They felt it was their duty to participate. So I think that's also a generational thing. So yeah, we incentivized, and if you can incentivize, that will increase your numbers, in some capacity. And I've heard of other tribes incentivizing as much as $100. I've heard them doing raffles. Like if you participate, you would get a raffle ticket and you could enter to win something. But I'm going to say this for the larger populations, I would use the exact same strategy that we did. And it's just persistence. You stay on top of that communications. But for a 5,000 tribe, you're going to need more boots on the ground. You're going to need a lot more cold callers. If you're a reservation tribe, get people to go door to door, get boots on the ground. If you want a successful census, it's about the commitment to it, and making sure that, you know, you are doing everything possible. Pull out every stop you can. Use all of your tools, social media, use phone calls, use in person, do whatever it takes to get the people to complete the sentence. And then the other piece that I would encourage is making sure that you limit your census in the amount of questions you're asking, because the more questions, because like when we first started our questions, we had hundreds of questions, and
like 160 maybe.
Yeah, like all of the departments were like, I need this information. And they had like 20 questions each. And I'm going, there's no way that people are going to commit to this much time. This is going to be a 5-hour commitment. You're not going to do it. So you really got to cater to what a person would likely contribute. And about a half an hour, I'm going to say, was about the max that I could get out of it. So we had to really get those questions down, which is why I think we pretty much gave like every department like 5 or 6 questions. But then we did leave an open box that said, what do you think should belong here? And that was key to our success, because people may, you know, they'll answer your questions, but they may have ideas that could contribute and say, hey, how come you don't have this program? Or, hey, this program is what's in my area. You know, and we don't necessarily know what Alaska's doing or Montana. So those, having that open space for the people to be able to add in their own need was a huge success for us. So now it kind of gives us a lot more of where we could potentially go. So yeah, I would just say, you know, stay on top of your communications for those bigger people, and really just get more hands to help you. But anybody can do it. The success is based purely on determination, on the person who's doing it and driving it, you know, or on that team. Because our team was big, and I will credit them to the success of it all day long.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that you know, we went into this being really clear that like we could partner with you, and we could give you all the tools, and we could give you the templates and the resources and the support, but that it was really the success really depended on your engagement and finding, you know, the community members, because there's nothing worse than the idea of having a bunch of outsiders come in and be like, you have to give this, right? Like with that never would have worked. I think the voices and the encouragement had to come from within the community and trusted members of the community.
Yeah, and I think one of the key messages that I would push is why this matters, because it's not just data collection. Like I said, you're collecting the story of your tribe. So you need to, you know, push that messaging on why it matters to get these data collecting points.
Well, and speaking of data, one of the questions in the Q&A says, have you or are there plans to use the information collected to augment reported U.S. Census Bureau data for your tribe?
Repeat the question.
Yeah. Are there plans to use the information collected to augment the federal census data for the tribe? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, we definitely do. We have been trying really hard to work with the Census Bureau, the Federal Census Bureau, and there is a tribe now that is on the Census Bureaus, getting them information, because the tribes are one of the things that is really not represented within the federal census. And so collecting our data, this is why it was so important for us to do it on our side first. Like I said, this is our story. We don't want somebody else to tell it. We want to tell it. So that's huge for us. And that's like, well, I want to say that's huge for most tribes. They want to all tell their own story. They don't want somebody else to do it. And so trying to get the federal government to recognize each tribe as a different entity, because we're all so different. It's not just one culture. It's a bunch of cultures, and trying to get them to recognize that and see that is been a challenge. And it is a challenge that we are facing, and we're facing it with integrity. We're going after it. We definitely want to see some changes in that federal census guideline to include tribes and be more tribe specific. We're part of the United States of America, and our voices should be heard.
Yeah, I think the main area that I heard from you about, I think traditionally census data goes into grant applications, right? So that is really critical for that, because different grants often ask for demographics and the different, the economics or veteran status, housing needs, all of those things. And because I think there wasn't kind of a high level of confidence in the federal census data actually representing Snoqualmie, because you are so geographically dispersed, I think this is in place of, right? Because I don't think the federal census has the data for you to be able to answer some of those questions.
No, they don't. And so it's been really hard for us to get, the actual funding that we actually need, because nothing really represents us in the data points. So this is huge for us to get, all of the right data points so that we can get the right funding.
Yeah. Another question from the Q&A. Do you plan to publish the findings, and or how do you plan to report back to the community?
That is a great question. I would say right now, the council hasn't made that decision. I have really encouraged them to publish the results. I think that your community participated and they really want to know those results. But that is a council decision. And I'm really hoping that that's where it lands. But if it doesn't land there, what I would say is a close consent second would be to publish at least some of the aggregate data upon our members portal. So that way we're not sharing that publicly necessarily, but we are sharing it within our community in a safe structure that wouldn't compromise the data. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're still in the process of getting the data, as we've just completed our census this last year. So as soon as I get that data, that question will have more, I guess, later. But I think that most governments should share that data.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the kind of final pieces that we put together was that summary version that just had the aggregated results in it. And so, yeah, I think it's just been the dust has been settling and figuring out some of those answers. But and very similar question from in the Q&A. I think that kind of has already been answered about will it be published, and has the tribe been able to use the data yet on any grant applications? I'm not sure you've used it, but I could be wrong. I don't think you've used it yet.
No, actually, we have been utilizing some of the from the Excel spreadsheet that you sent me. We've been using some of those aggregate data points right now, especially we have a child care center. So we've been trying to get some grants for that, and we were able to utilize the schooling kids, our data points from that. Also our economic development. We are putting together an economic development team, and we've just put them into place. They start next month. But we were able to use the data to streamline that process already. Healthcare, where, we now understand our demographics and understand now that the healthcare that we have in place right now, we service 5 counties, and we now see that is just not enough. And we need to expand that. And so we have been taking active steps now to start to look at how to expand these things based around our census data.
Yeah, and I feel like I didn't do a great job in the introduction, kind of going through all the different topics that we covered in the census. So I feel like I should give a little bit of that summary as a kind of closing thought. We obviously asked for like personal and demographic information, but then we also asked questions like, how often do you engage in cultural traditional practices? How many hours? How important is it to you? What are some ideas that you have for how the tribe can better support maintaining and empowering the cultural elements of the tribe so those don't get lost? We asked about things like living conditions, right? Do you have any, concerning, challenging things like mold or toxins or unsafe structures? We asked if, about health difficulties and challenges to, that point about the healthcare piece. There was a question. So now there's like a representation of, across challenges like difficulty seeing or difficulty hearing or difficulty walking or difficulty with self-care, right? Like there's now some representative data about what the biggest needs are for the community. We asked about childcare. And everyone knows it's ridiculously expensive. But we asked about, what are the subsidies that are available that you're using? What are the different types of childcare that you're using? Is it full-time? How many hours? Lots of detail that I think that wouldn't necessarily come to mind when we think about just a traditional census. So it was a bit of a blend between kind of getting the demographic and the inputs about kind of the needs of the community, the makeup of the community, but also kind of pulling together and teasing out as much as possible those service need questions that are very specific to Snoqualmie elements. Even things like asking about for tribal artists, were they feeling supported? Did they feel like their IP was protected, right? And so things like that, which I thought was really compelling in terms of this is not just dry data, right? To your point earlier about the stories that came out. And that's one of the reasons we covered so many topics. I think that's helped those stories come out because we took them everywhere.
We tried to cover everything, and because you're going to do this every 10 years, we really wanted to set that groundwork and that framework for the things that are most important to the people that we could see, right? Housing, healthcare, schooling, development, and cultural programs. So we really tried to cater to what we thought was the most important aspects.
Yeah. And even got input of like, do people prefer online or in person, day of the weeks, time of day? How do they prefer to hear about tribal events? We got into some of that as well, so that, oh, yep, email and social media, not a huge surprise. But again, being able to kind of validate some of, I think, the assumptions that were in place of like, yeah, how are people learning about different events and then going on. I know we have one. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and one of the other aspects too was how to get that community engagement, right? What is preventing you from participating within the community? And what's, how can we encourage that? The other big thing that I thought was really huge was, anybody who's going to college, how can we encourage you to work for the tribe at the end of the day? We are paying for that college education. Do you want to come and work for us? And so those kind of things too, we were trying to layer it to make sure we were really getting to the guts and the grains and trying to also support the community growth within the future. And I think a lot of that is coming out now, because a lot of kids that are in school were like, oh my gosh, I could come work for the tribe. I didn't even think that at the end of the day, that, you know, and so now it's like starting to build that perception of, yes, go to school and then come and work for us.
I think that's a great note to end on. Kiva, can you close us out?
Yes, thank you so much, Emily, Alyssa, and Chrissie, for such a great presentation today. That was so informative. If we didn't have time to answer your questions, we'll do our best to follow up with you after the webcast, but please feel free to reach out to any of our presenters if you do have additional questions. We invite you to visit our website for more resources and information on this topic, many of which are linked in the handouts window. And finally, here is a link to a survey for today's presentation, and your feedback is always appreciated. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, and take care, everyone.
Thank you.